Hello everybody, so hopefully an interesting video for you today. Something that has fascinated me the most about the recently, the videos that we've been doing, the streams with Shin and Tiffany over the last few months have been brilliant. I really sort of proud. I was going to say proud them. It makes it sound like it's some kind of symphonic construction, but I am kind of happy with the topics that we discuss, and really try and delve into it as deeply as possible, into our feelings about Lorne and the type of person he is, those type of people, to approach it with as much humility as possible and search for the truth wherever it may take us. And it's very difficult to do with someone like Lorne, because when somebody is a child predator, and he is, there's a lot of self-bias there. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of anger, hatred even. It's totally understandable. People like him are at the bottom of the barrel. I think even Tiffany said it to him in a call once. You get child predators in jail, and they are the ones that get the most protection. They're seen as the lowest of the low. Even like murderers, or even, you might even get like a rapist who would still look down on a child rapist. They are literally the lowest of the low. So it's totally understandable that people are never going to give people like Lorne a break. Especially with people whose lives have been affected by it, whether it's directly or indirectly, and that's what's interesting about some of the the topics that we've been covering over the last year or so. Really, it's been it's an endless source of topics, the Lorne saga. It really is. What I always try and do is try and figure out why Lorne is like he is. He's an extreme manifestation of fucking failure, of ridicule, of inept ability, of integrity, judgment, everything that you could think of that is required to have a normal life is missing from him, really. Not everything. It's like he is resourceful. He's a prolific little chatter, as we know. He can be, even Betty said it, he can have an element of charm to him. She said she found him charming. So he does have traits, but he uses them all incorrectly. Now, I have a view on the nature of evil which a lot of people don't agree with, and it doesn't really I have my views and beliefs, and that's fine. It doesn't really concern me what other people think, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way. It's like, it is of no bearing that if someone disagrees with me, I know what I believe. And even people that are my friends don't agree with me at all, completely disagree with what I say. It doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't matter what somebody else's beliefs are. I respect it. The only thing, belief is just a thought. It doesn't really have any bearing on much of anything. The only thing that really matters is, are you true to yourself, and are you kind to other people? Them are really the only things that determine your value as a human being. I think it was Einstein that said the value of a human being is determined by their lack of sense of self. So it's like, how big is your ego? And an ego doesn't mean that you loud mouth and you think you're fantastic and you shouting and I'm this and I'm that. An ego is just as strong in a deeply unhappy person who thinks that they are the ultimate victim of the universe. It's just two sides of the same coin. So what I've always tried in my videos since I was making videos years and years ago. Well, not years and years ago. It was like 2 or 3 years ago when I started rambling on about Lorne. It's always been important to me to try and figure out why this guy ended up like he has. It's what allured me to Lorneography. There's many elements to it, of course, because it's fucking funny, as we all know. There is schadenfreude there in that we do look upon it and go, at least I'm not Lorne Armstrong. It can give you a sense of perspective. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that every now and again, to have a bit of perspective if you're feeling down. But ultimately, I have seen it in this community where people would use Lorne on a regular basis to make themselves feel better, and it's no good. It's not the right way to go about things. So yeah, you have to get your strength from another place. You can't just look upon people worse off than you to make yourself feel better. It's ultimately, that's completely dysfunctional if you have to do that all the time. But of course I've done that. We all get down, don't we? It's the nature of human existence. We're not going to feel great all the time. We're not going to have a good day all the time. We're not going to feel great about ourselves all the time. We're not going to, succeed all the time. We're going to fuck up. And, you look at his spectacular failure and you go, man, I've got nothing to worry about, And I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with that. But, like, the videos that I initially started making were I really started to find it interesting as to, I couldn't really understand why he was so deluded, why he thought that why is his judgment so poor, why has he got zero integrity, like zero. Something I've been thinking about is Lorne's relationship with his father. It's quite, weird. I was raised by my mum. It's become a bit of a joke, hasn't it? Which is pretty funny when he keeps saying it. But what really interests me, something that Lorne said, is something that happened to him when he was younger involving Bunky, which is something else that we all laugh about. I think that's got the potential to be a very significant event in Lorne's life. Now, I can't say that it's totally accurate for many reasons, which I'll go into shortly. Now, I don't want to patronise anybody, but we can, we all know how important a child's relationship is with their parents. But I think it's more important than we actually still realise to this day, for a number of reasons. Obviously you learn behaviours, children feed off emotions. I could talk for hours about it. There is something that's quite impactful that I wanted to just share a clip of. I don't know whether you've heard of him. I'm sure some of you have. There is a Canadian clinical psychologist called Jordan Peterson who wrote a book called The 12 Rules of Life. I've listened to... I've read three-quarters of the book. It's pretty heavy reading. it's you know what I mean? It can get pretty heavy, but it's pretty good. And I listened to, some of his lectures on YouTube. He's quite ill at the moment, apparently. It's pretty sad, really. But he's been on Joe Rogan I think he's been on a couple of times. He's been on at least once. He's been on like debates with Ben Shapiro. I think there's no point me going into detail. But there was something I stumbled across on YouTube which I thought was really interesting about how important a child's relationship is with the father. And I just wanted to go over that with you now.
What kind of relationship do you have with your father, your real father? It's often ambivalent, right? Because there's an element of him that encouraged you, hopefully, because without the encouragement of your father, man, the world is a dismal place. It's very difficult to be a courageous person unless you have your father in body and spirit behind you. It's very demoralizing. Like, it really kills people not to have their mother. They just don't recover from that. And I think people can recover from a fragmented father relationship, but it's the next worst thing. You know, because if your father rejects you or doesn't form a relationship with you, it's as if the spirit of civilization has left you outside the walls as of little worth. It's very difficult for people to recover from that. So the father should be an encouraging force, but can be a tyrannical and crushing force. And so that's
So that was just a little clip. You know, there's loads of other stuff I could refer to, but I think it's really important. It sort of makes you realise how important a child's relationship is with the father. Especially, obviously gender's massively important. For instance, you know, a girl's relationship with the father is different for many reasons. We know enough about Lorne to know that he's a sensitive person. I don't have all the answers with regard to what makes people more emotional than others. You know, you're talking about something that we can't quantify and can't really explain, is the human spirit. You know, consciousness is undefinable and always will be as far as science goes. You know, if you ask any reputable scientist, I'm sure you can ring one up immediately. You know, there's the hard problem of consciousness, which means that we haven't got a fucking clue what consciousness is, and anybody that says they does is lying or stupid. It cannot be defined. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that says the Tao, which means life force, which can be spoken of, is not the real Tao. That's from the Dao Jing. Is that pronounced right? I'm getting really fucking, you know what I'm like, I'm getting out there now, aren't I? But basically it can't be defined. So there's certain things that we can't find the answers to. Is like, you know, why are some people more ridiculously sensitive than others? It's just the differentiation in the human race is just infinite. You know, there's all kinds of different people in all, you know, the world. We know that Lorne's sensitive. We know that he idolizes his brothers and sisters. He had an absent father. It will have affected him. I'm not trying, you see, what I'm trying to do, some people may look at this and you know, it's like trying to make excuses for him. I'm just after the truth. And what he has a choice, just to sort of, this is like a disclaimer. He has a choice in what we believe people have a choice. It's free will is something that isn't really, it's not as free as what you might think, but he has a choice and he always chooses to do the wrong thing. We know that. We've seen it. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, trying to understand the reason that we're all interested in Lorne and continue to be is because of how extreme his behaviours are, is the level of lack of responsibility that he takes upon his life is beyond anything that we could have ever conceived of. It is the writings of a comedy, of a movie, of The Room. You've seen The Room? It's like the real life version of that. It's like you're watching it, you're like, that can't be real. That can't be real. It's just baffling. Even now, it's just years and years of doing video after video after video, and it's amazing that this guy believes the shit he does. What is it? What on earth is it? Is he suffering from some kind of psychosis? We believe he may be. I believe that it's something to do, well, it's got everything to do with your upbringing is going to shape you. Let's just have a little listen to what Lorne said about this does make me chuckle, but just have a quick listen to this.
And Barbara had her son Bunky And Bunky, I was playing with a fucking toy, and Bunky came and took it away from me. I went and told my fucking dad. He told me let Bunky have it. That's the only memory that I had of my fucking dad.
Now, another disclaimer. We don't know. That's just Lorne's words. That was a conversation he had with Ramona, and he was trying to get out of a bit of a hole at the time. So it is questionable. I believe that there is truth in that. It's too much of a sophisticated lie for him to come up with. There's the memory issue, the time lapse. He was about... I've tried to piece together the timeline of how old he would have been. He would have been about 5 or 6, maybe even younger. He's playing with a toy. What's interesting about that is I believe he would have been about 5 or 6, right? When you're about 5 or 6, 4 or 5, it's the first signs of an ego starts to develop, and a child goes, mine, mine. The mind starts to develop and the ego starts to develop, and what happens is you personally identify with things, concepts. Concepts could be, you start to identify as you, as the individual, and then you start to identify with toys and people. Toys become a sense of yourself. If you are given a toy by whoever, that becomes ingrained in your sense of self. At the first developments, the first stages of development of a person, of a child, you take a toy off a child, and it's like it's ingrained within us all, isn't it? The kid has the toy, you won't let go, mine, mine. It's because they're starting to attach to things, people, possessions. So that toy represented a sense of Lorne's self, yeah? This is a theory, by the way. but some of it is going to be true, if what we've heard is true, which I think there is some of it. That toy represented a sense of Lorne's self. He went to his dad, and his dad wasn't interested. That toy would have represented a part of Lorne. Not only did his dad, was his father not interested, a rival took it away from him. Bunky. What was interesting about listening to Lorne's talk then was how he, when he said Bunky, he went Bunky, like there was anger towards Bunky. When you listen to, he's like Barbara, and Barbara had her son Bunky. Now Lorne's pretty angry a lot of the time, but Lorne still resents Bunky for taking his toy away from him. It sounds comical as I'm saying this, because I found that story quite funny. It's like someone popped up in the comments called Bunky Armstrong. People love to grab hold of these things, and I get it, but if you think that toy represented a part of Lorne's self, the father, who's supposed to be, like what Jordan Peterson said, you need to have your father's encouragement. Lorne's sense of self was in that toy. The father said, I'm not interested, and Bunky had it. So someone else took a part of Lorne's self, and the father wasn't interested. I'm not saying that one incident is obviously, because it'll be like Lorne trying to come up with some crazy way. It's like, well, you didn't tell me, you know what I mean? He comes up with these crazy excuses. It's also, I've also thought that Lorne thought to mention that to Ramona. It wasn't completely unsolicited. I mean, it kind of was, because he was talking about his father, and he was trying to justify his behaviour a little bit, which points to the fact that he may have been using it as an excuse, which he does. However, I believe that there is truth in that story. We know his father was absent. We know that he was never around. Lorne's whole problem is, when you get deep down to it, this kind of not bravado, but this kind of arrogance that he has, if you want to call it arrogance, of, you know, this refusal to accept that he's done anything wrong ever, is because deep down he feels worthless, totally worthless. Because in order to accept that you fuck up, it takes a lot of courage sometimes, especially depending on what it is that you've fucked up about, or sorry, what it is that you've done wrong or failed at or whatever. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a man, really, and it's something that you got to go through the shit to get to that point where, you know, you do something wrong and you take it on the chin. You know what I mean? You've just got to. Lorne's never been able to do that, has he? I believe that the reason is because if he was to accept that he's failed, he would have to face up to that worthlessness. His refusal to believe that his refusal to accept that he's done wrong, or he's failed, or that he's not good enough. He would have to face up to that worthlessness. It's like a protection that his ego has installed. It's completely counterproductive, but many things that we do, the human mind, are counterproductive. It's like when people are depressed, you isolate yourself from other people, even though you're depressed because you're probably too isolated, or in a lot of cases, it's really strange. Some of the, and you know, as humans, we're a kind of work in progress. You know, we're evolving, and we're at a very early stage of development, really, as far as intelligence goes. You know, so So yeah, I believe that this kind of lack of responsibility is because it's extreme, isn't it? You only have to read the lawsuit. We've talked about it for years. It's what makes it so unusual and funny, and it gobsmacks us every time he gets on the phone to another catfish, or blames the judge, or blames NBC. It's beyond normal ego. You know, it's beyond normal lack of responsibility that we all. The thing is people, we don't like to take responsibility because we don't want to admit failure. But generally speaking, we'll do it most of the time. You know, it's like when I play on, you know, the football on the PlayStation and I'm losing, I'll fucking blame the referee or something, and then you think about it and you're like, well, no, actually, it's because I'm shit. But Lorne can never do that. He can't do it. It's remarkable. So why is it so extreme? Why? There's got to be a reason. Is it just that he was made that way? What's the reason behind it? Is it because he chooses to? He does choose to, but why? There's the development that humans have when you're younger. It's like I mentioned it in another video. Neuroplasticity is, I think it's not something that's been generally known for a long period of time, but your brain structure is altered even when you're an adult as to learning and how you keep your mind occupied. When you're a kid, that is massively impactful on your development. It's like we were saying earlier about your relationships with other people, your environment. It's ridiculous. It's like it's an infinite amount of causal events which determine your personality and your surround, you know, what you've made of your life. It's like, so Lorne didn't have the father, and what I touched upon before when I said, like, he idolised his brothers and sisters, the sensitive nature of what he is means he has to look up to someone. He will have looked up to his father, and then his father was absent, so his father allowed Bunky to take the toy, or he didn't do anything about it, and then left. It just left. Now, what his mother told him about what happened, I'm not sure. But that will have impacted him massively. Now, I believe he was the youngest of the siblings, especially certainly the male ones, as I understand it. So the other male role models will have been his brothers. Now, I don't think he was treated particularly well by them. There is these stories about what he said happened. I don't want to touch upon that. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. I'm not even sure if I believe it or not. So let's just say that, his father did leave. As we understand it, his father wasn't a good person. He fathered a lot of kids with various women, as we understand it, and just didn't care for any of them. So the absent father and the bunkie incident, that's created. If you remember what Jordan Peterson said, it's his whole world. The world's a tough place, and he ended up being that tragic figure that you see there. Now, it doesn't mean every now and again you get special people who can break out of the mental conditioning. Like we've mentioned it in a video, Megan Phelps was a member of the Westboro Baptist Church. She was programmed to picket line dead soldiers' funerals and say horrible things about gay people, and she started to think for herself. You can break out of it. It's very rare to break out of your conditioning. It takes a lot of courage, but I don't think it was ever Lorne's destiny to break out of it. I understand that some people might think I'm trying to make excuses for him, because he doesn't really just end up justifying how he ended up being a child predator. But one thing's for sure, his relationships, he's not had a girl, he's never had a proper relationship. That would, to me, be because he feels worthless. Girls pick up on that immediately. Girls can smell a rat. Girls can smell a lack of confidence. It's the I don't know a huge amount about women, strangely enough, but I do know that they like confident men, and he's not one. That will have explained why he's failed so dramatically at relationships. That then has created this massive desperation for validation that he didn't get from his father. His mother would have been too busy doing dealing with everything else that she had to deal with, all his brothers and sister, his brother's sister. So he looked upon the relationship as the answer to his problems. I'm gonna love you and blah blah blah, my precious princess. He wants that unconditional love that he never got from his dad, ever. And to take away his pain, ultimately it's not going to do that. And life isn't punishing him. Life doesn't punish people like that. It's just the laws of living. You cannot find validation and happiness in an external phenomenon. It's an inner phenomenon. The universe is internal. There's no universe out there. It's all inside you. Everything that you do, everything that you say, think, feel, see, hear, touch is all inside you. It appears it's out there, but it isn't. So that you're not going to find happiness in anything external. It's got to come from inside first. And he has been programmed by society to make you think that their special relationship can solve all your problems and you live happily ever after. And we watch the movies and it cuts at the wedding and fails to show when they kick the shit out of each other after the wedding. So he saw that as a way of validation and a way of feeling love. I'm sure I don't know that much about his mother. I don't feel that comfortable talking about it that much, really. I don't mind touching upon it too much, but I just don't think it's fair, really, to go into that much detail, you know. But I think it's fair to say she will have fucked up. Very few parents don't. You know, not that many kids grow up to be rock stars. Lorne's grown up, unfortunately for him and his family, to be the, you know, the epitome of failure. Just you cannot fail more than he's done. You know what he tried to do. It's just remarkable, really, and still, you know, he still doesn't get it. So, how much of that? Let's just say that the Bunky thing was as impactful as what I'm making it out to be. I don't think anybody can deny that his absent father will have had a massive impact on him. You couple that with him not being able to find a relationship when he's younger. He looks a bit, you know, he doesn't. I would suggest he's not the best looking guy in the world. Didn't have a lot of money, and then he's seeking that relationship as a way of, you know, feeling good, and it never happened. And then he becomes a predator because he can't find anybody his own age, and he goes after the younger ones. It's what a predator does. I love the term predator because it's so apt. It's like you pick out the weakest, the vulnerable kid. Victim number one that we talked about, the real one, was a victim, was a vulnerable kid with a alcoholic parent. Exactly the type of girl that people like Lorne go after, because they've got low self-esteem, they've got a very poor idea, and it goes back to the father. You've got a very poor, that girl will have had a very poor view of men. I can't quite find the words at the minute. She will have had a very bad sort of experience of what men are. Her role model of the alcoholic father will have shaped her to seek out, not necessarily seek out, but be susceptible to people like Lorne. It's complicated, very, very complicated. It isn't something that I can find the answer to in a 30-minute video, but I think it's interesting to explore. And then he seeks out these younger ones because he knows deep down that he can't get someone his own age unless they've got massive, massive problems like he has. And if they do, that relationship will be fucked. There's no happy ending there, ever. You know what I mean? Even people who are well-rounded, well-adjusted, good, hard-working, law-abiding people struggle in relationships. You get two people like a Lorne and a female Lorne, it's disaster, isn't it? And that's how murders happen and stuff. It's like, with regard to him, I think he's a different kind of predator to somebody like McFetridge. I know some people might disagree with that. I'm not saying he's any worse or any better. I'm not ranking them in, you know, that's not the purpose. But there are different kinds of these people. You know, it's like we've said, there's the genetic reasons. I don't think Lorne's attraction to children is necessarily as genetic as what it would be with McFetridge. He is he's one of those people. It's like it goes back thousands of years, unfortunately. Why genetically it happens, fucking no idea. You know, I'm pretty sure no one does. Why it goes on, we've no idea. But I think it's interesting, the absent father, how it shaped him. Like I said, I'm pretty sure even the most kind of cynical viewer of this video will agree that it will have shaped him in some degree. There are people out there that will have had an absent father who will have grown up and done very well for themselves and been a very good person. It happens. But every person's life is unique. Every single human being is infinitely unique. There's nobody else like you or anybody else. Everybody, even like twins, will have grown up genetically identical twins will have had a slightly different experience in their life. you know, the universe is infinite in its, you know, in the life forms, and that's it's an infinite play of diversity, and of course, you know, you know, you got the absent father that he said is his first memory of him. Like I said, we can't be sure that information is accurate because it's coming from someone who couldn't lie straight in bed. But of course he does. There are glimmers of truth that come out, and you've got to seek them out and use your own judgment. I believe it's a relatively accurate story. I believe that is the reason where and why this lack of sense of self, because if he's the youngest, he's going to look up to his brothers who have bullied him. That's going to have had that impact on him as well. You know, it goes on, and he's still that person. He's still that kid, as far as I'm concerned. He's never grown up. He's never grown up. And it doesn't mean that we feel sorry for him. Sympathy is not required. Understanding is healthy, because hating someone isn't good for you. Doesn't mean that you write a letter to him and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Lorne." His life is his responsibility. People have got over worse. He's healthy. He's resourceful, and he's got free will, as much as a human being can have free will. There is some teachings out there that say we haven't got any free will at all, because everything that you do is all predetermined. There's no point going into that. But as far as a human being goes, he's got free will. He has the ability to do better. He always chooses not to. He runs away from his problems. He cries. You know, he's a mess. He's a mess. But like I said, I think that it's interesting. It's an interesting topic. I hope that you have enjoyed this little little bit of speculation. I'd be very interested to hear what your comments are and your thoughts about what I've said. Whether you agree with any of it or disagree, whether you've got your own theories, whether you think he's blatantly lying, whether you think I'm talking complete shit. It does happen. Yeah, so guys, thank you very much for listening. There will be some streams coming soon, no doubt, when we have some news about what's going on and all that. I'm sure we'll share it with you. But please, guys, thank you very much for listening. Please leave any comments, and I'll speak to you soon.